sit together and talk about how our cities are being impacted by climate change. Um, there are many intersections across which you can see how climate change is impacting urban centers in Lahore. We wanted to start this discussion with Karachi because we feel Karachi has its unique set of problems, and we were very excited to be here and to be interacting with everyone. The whole so I Dr. Nabi is going to be speaking next, and I would like him to talk a little bit about what IGC does and what CDPR does, and introduce these organizations to those who are not familiar with it. But the idea is that there's a huge range of issues when we talk about the nexus of climate change and urban centers, and I think when we sit together, we need to prioritize what we want to focus on because we cannot tackle everything. So there's certain issues that are very urgent that need to be addressed now. Otherwise, there's a risk of undoing the development gains that we have, achieved. So we thought that it would be a good idea to have this session where each one of us brings in their own perspective and experience, and we can then sit together to really see what should be our short-term goals and what is, what can be achieved in the long term. So without taking more time, I would like to ask Dr. Jazabi, who's joined us virtually, to make his opening remarks. One second, let us put you off mute 1 second. We can't hear him. She was meant to come. I have no idea what happened. Let me call her again.
मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
जी आ रही है.
मुझे एको से पता चल रहा है कि मेरी आवाज आ रही है. जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम एवरीबॉडी. बहुत शुक्रिया. मुझे बड़ी खुशी हो रही है देख के कि बहुत से लोग आए हुए हैं जिनको इनवाइट किया. सबसे पहले तो मेरी तरफ से माजरत, मैंने वहाँ मौजूद होना था, लेकिन रमज़ान की वजह से लाहौर की जो 2 महीने होते हैं जहाँ पर ज़्यादातर लाहौर के त्यौहार मनाए जाते हैं और हमारा LLF होता है, फैज़ मेला होता है, वो सब इकट्ठा एक ही महीने में हो गया फरवरी में. इसका मतलब ये है कि अक्सर बाहर जाके खाना होता था, तो उनमें से एक खाने ने मुझे जकड़ लिया, चुनाचे मैं नहीं आ सका. इसके लिए सब मेरी तरफ से बहुत सारी माजरत. I'll just say a couple of words on CDPR and IGC. IGC is the International Growth Center. It is a joint Oxford University and London School of Economics initiative. It is funded by UK government, but funded directly out of London. And LSE, which is the secretariat for the International Growth Center, that's the London School of Economics, they manage 9 country programs. 3 of those are in South Asia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India. The team that's arranged this event in Karachi is the Pakistan country team for the IGC. I head the IGC program in Pakistan. CDPR, which is jointly hosting this along with IB in Karachi. But CDPR is a consortium for development policy research. It's based in Lahore. Lahore has 2 or 3 other research centers, and we try and do as much as is possible to try and create a platform for disseminating the research that takes place in these different centers. होती थी, लेकिन हम सबको अपना लेते थे अपनी डेवलपमेंट to control that instability, we need to make hard choices. कि हमने किसको टैक्स करना है और किसको छूट देनी है, हमने क्या एक्सपेंडिचर बढ़ाने हैं और क्या कम करने हैं. ये सब हार्ड चॉइसेस हम अपने पर्सनल लेवल पे तो करते हैं. यही हार्ड चॉइसेस फिर एग्रीगेशन में हुकूमतों को भी करने पड़ते हैं. But we stopped doing that because we had, for geopolitical reasons, we had access to concessionary finance and we stopped making those hard choices. मैं समझता हूँ कि as the geopolitical situation changes, we will be forced to make those hard choices. And those hard choices can only be made if we had proper evidence to decide which is the priority. And today's discussion is going to focus exactly on that. In the area of climate change, we know what the big issues are, the big issues Pakistan is likely to face. The number one issue is catastrophic events, such as the floods that happened in 22. These catastrophic events are beyond our control, but we will need to respond to those. The second important climate change issue we have to face is what happens to water over the years. We know that the Himalayan ice melt will happen, and we know that eventually Indus is likely to have far less water than it has now. And that has severe long-term implications. The third big climate change issue that we need to deal with is going to be rising temperatures and the impact of that on productivity across the board, agriculture, but also urban areas. So all of these things will need to be decided upon, will need to be acted upon with very little or dwindling, decreasing external, concessionary external finance. So we will need to make hard choices. Zeroing on the cities will be highly impacted by the heat effect of climate change. There will be islands of extreme heat in the cities, which will affect especially the elderly, but also young children. There will be impact on productivity in cities. But cities also have the additional burden of making sure that the sewage is expunged in a safe way and that the air is breathable, especially in an upper part of the country, in Lahore, etc., where for 3 or 4 months of the year, the air becomes extremely toxic. So those are the issues that we'll have to deal with. And the best way to address those issues will be to have the evidence to decide how we address them. We are fortunate in Pakistan that the fact that we have 4 provinces means that there's a lot of learning we can do from each other. Lahore, for example, can learn enormously from the energy and the dynamism and the middle class culture that Karachi has. Lahore lacks these. So there's a lot that Lahore can learn from Karachi. And on the reverse side, Lahore has a very good urban center. It is currently headed by Omar Masood, who's here with us. This urban center has developed over time, has developed the expertise of data gathering and informing decision making in Lahore on the basis of the data that they collect. And it's fantastic that they are able to share that experience with Karachi. So I look forward to these conversations. I'll be listening in as much as I can. the three sessions that we have are all very pertinent to the issues that I mentioned in my remarks. We have to be able to identify the spatial vulnerabilities of cities. We have to be able to do governance and planning of cities, and we have to be able to raise finance in order to address those issues, and really take up the ownership of these issues ourselves, and thereby make the hard choices that need to be made so that we can fund them. Let me stop here, and let me once again welcome all of you to what is going to be a very absorbing day of discussions on these issues. There are many wonderful people who are attending it. The camera doesn't allow me to see everybody, but I would like to extend a special welcome to Khurram Hussain. We need the journalists to be with us so that they can be part of the discussion, because they are going to amplify the messages that come out of these workshops to the broader citizenry, so that we can all be part of this discussion. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Nabi. I would now like to invite Dr. Lubna, who is a professor and director at CDPR IBA, to take us through.
Good morning, everyone. It's truly a pleasure to welcome you all at this workshop. As Dr. Ejaz Nabi has already mentioned that, yes, I think I can speak louder. Interesting to all of you. And
साउंड क्यों बंद कर
few
दिया?
things which I would like to share on behalf of these The purpose of the center is to promote dialogues on various issues, including climate changes, and other than being involved in the advocacy for different issues and human rights, we also collaborate with different institutions, including national and international ones, in research, evidence-based research. So we are not that developed like the CDPR and the IGC, so we are particularly thankful to them that they have come all together from Lahore here in Karachi. And here I would like to mention three things that why this workshop, although this is being held in Karachi, so why this is important to hold this important workshop at Karachi. If you see Karachi में आपको क्या मिलता है? Karachi presents a mix of residents, examples and experiences जो आपको कहीं नहीं मिलेंगे. Karachi में आप अगर कभी आए हो, you have commuted from your workplace to the city campus of the IBA. You must have noticed one thing. ये encroached city है, completely encroached city है. Land grabbing भी है, ocean grabbing भी है. कि हम इसमें रिसर्च करते हैं, अभी डॉक्टर साहब आपको बताएंगे, डॉक्टर नौशीन उसका सेंटर इस पर काम करता है. तो यहाँ पर ओशन ग्रैबिंग भी है, यहाँ लैंड ग्रैबिंग भी है. फिर अगर आप दूसरी तरफ देखें तो यहाँ पर आपको कम्युनिटी ड्रिवन डेवलपमेंट भी मिलेगी. औरंगी पायलट प्रोजेक्ट इज दी एग्जाम्पल. किस तरह से कम्युनिटी को इन्वॉल्व करके, जिस पर हम आज बात भी करने जा रहे हैं, आप किस तरह से डेवलपमेंट को लेकर आ सकते हैं. तो कम्युनिटी ड्रिवन डेवलपमेंट like without any support of the government, how can you bring only community and the private sector together to work for the welfare of the people, to work for the welfare of the community? So this unique experience आपको कराची में मिलेगा. Thirdly, अगर आप कराची की डेमोग्राफी देखें, which is different from other cities or centers of the Pakistan, urban centers of the Pakistan, तो वहाँ पे आपको हर जगह का बंदा मिलेगा. Like आपको, you can find people coming from all over पाकिस्तान और अक्रॉस पाकिस्तान आप इंटीरियर सिंध से देखिए, जब भी कोई फ्लड आएगा तो इस तरह का इशू होगा तो लोग सिटी की तरफ मूव करते हैं क्योंकि उनको पता है कि यहाँ पर आपको डेली वेज जो है वो जॉब मिल जाती है। अगर आप देखें जो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स होते हैं, पॉलिटिकल कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स होते हैं, आपकी केपी में हो, आपके फाटा में हो, बाहर से लोग भी कराची की तरफ आते हैं क्योंकि उनको पता है ये वो सिटी है जहाँ से उनको गेनफुल एम्प्लॉयमेंट एटलीस्ट टेम्पररी मिल सकती है। अगर आप देखें जो सिंध के अंदर जितना भी अफगान्स आए उसका 95% 74,000 जो है इट इज़ होस्टेड बाय कम्युनिटीज़ इन कराची। तो वो अफगान इमिग्रेंट्स भी आपको मिलेंगे, आपको बिहार के लोग भी यहाँ मिलेंगे, बर्मीज भी आपको यहाँ मिलेंगे। तो ये वो आपको मिक्स ऑफ आप कह सकते हैं वो प्रेसिडेंट सेट करता है इन कम्युनिटी ड्रिवन डेवलपमेंट में। आपको वो एक्सपीरियंसेस आपके सामने रखता है जो आपको दूसरी सिटीज़ में नहीं मिलेंगे। अब जो हमारे लिए अलार्मिंग चैलेंज है वो है आपका क्लाइमेट चेंजेस। और क्लाइमेट चेंज में अगर आप कराची का डेटा सिर्फ देखें तो लास्ट 3 ईयर्स के अंदर कराची में जो हीट वेव्स हैं वो बहुत इंक्रीज़ कर गई हैं, अलार्मिंगली इंक्रीज़ कर गई हैं। 36 डेज़ तो जो रिकग्नाइज्ड हैं, जो गवर्नमेंट के फिगर्स हैं उस पे हैं। उसके अलावा अभी डॉक्टर साहिबा भी बात करेंगी, जो आपका समर है वो आपका प्रोलॉन्ग कर गया है। तो जब समर प्रोलॉन्ग करता है तो एक्सपोजर टू हीट वेव्स जो है वो आपका बढ़ जाता है या हॉट सीज़न में बढ़ जाता है। और सिर्फ आपका जब आपका समर प्रोलॉन्ग करता है तो एयर पोल्यूशन भी कॉज करता है। इस पर भी आज बात हो रही होगी किस तरह से एयर पोल्यूशन कॉज करता है कि आपकी जो ओजोन है वो एक थिन एयर है बिटवीन द सन एंड द जो आपका सरफेस है। तो जिस तरह से आपका हीट जो है वो इंक्रीज़ करती है तो वो जो रेडिएशन है सन की वो ओजोन के थ्रू जो आती है वो कम हो जाती है। उसका इफ़ेक्ट आपके पास क्या आता है कि जो PM 2.5 है जिसको हम पार्टिकुलेट मैटर 2.5 एंड पार्टिकुलेट मैटर 10 कहते हैं, उसकी एब्जॉर्प्शन वैसे नहीं होती, लेकिन जब वो आपके पास ओजोन की जो लेयर है वो थिन होती है तो वो कंसंट्रेट कर जाते हैं क्लोज टू द सरफेस। जो क्लोज टू द सरफेस वो आपके जब कंसंट्रेट करते हैं तो पीपल इनहेल दैम। तो जो आपके पास जो आपकी अपर एयरवेज हैं, जो लोअर एयरवेज हैं, जो सिर्फ लोअर देन 1 जो है PM से पहले अफेक्ट होती थी, वो PM 2.5 और 5 से भी अफेक्ट हो रही हैं जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ द इंक्रीजिंग हीट वेव्स और द रिस्क ऑफ द हीट वेव्स। फिर अर्बन फ्लडिंग भी एक आपके पास इशू है। तो आई होप कि दिस वर्कशॉप में इन टुडेज डिस्कशन you will have a great chance to explore different themes, including the key themes which this agenda has mentioned, the special vulnerabilities in cities and the climate resilient urban planning and innovative financing solutions for resilience. So you will have ample opportunity to discuss other things as well. So with that, thank you again to all of you, and I look forward to insights and perspectives emerging from the dialogue today. Thank you again. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Lubna. We're also glad that we have Syed Jawad Muzaffar Saab here with us, who is the Director of the Directorate of Urban Regional Policy and Strategic Planning, and we would also like him to say a few words to start off this discussion.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me here. I thanks CDPR, IGC, IBA, and the Urban Unit Punjab and the World Bank. A brief introduction. I am a civil servant by profession, and I have remained as Deputy Commissioner for Karangi and Matiari. So served as Director Land CDA. Currently, I am serving as the Director for Directorate of Urban Planning, this Planning Development Department, Government of Sindh. So it's an honor to be here to discuss the challenges faced by the climate change and its impact on the urban centers. So with its diverse mix of urban and rural landscape, Sindh stands at the forefront of climate-induced challenges. Cities like Karachi, Hyderabad, Sakhar are facing extreme weathers and deteriorating air quality, urban flooding, placing immense strain on the infrastructure, public health, and livelihoods. So, Sindh has been experiencing this rising temperature, unpredictable rainfall patterns, and increasingly frequent disasters, all exacerbated by these climate changes. So the key indicators are definitely the heat waves and the urban heat islands. Karachi recorded almost 49 degree in 2022 with urban heat islands intensifying this impact on the city dwellers. Then comes the air pollution. The province struggles with worsening air quality due to industrial emission, this vehicular pollution, and poor waste management, making the city amongst the most polluted city in South Asia. Then the urban flooding. The devastating 2022 floods submerged almost 50% of Sindh, displacing millions and crippling the urban infrastructure over here. Then, as Madam Lubna discussed this coastal grabbing, so coastal erosion and sea level is another issue. Karachi coastline and the Indus Delta are shrinking, endangering mangroves, fisheries, and coastal communities. So, what are the contributing factors? First of all, the rapid urbanization and the poor planning. Unfortunately, we have unregulated urban expansion that has led to waterlogging, flash floods, and increased heat retention. Then the loss of green spaces and rising temperature. The dominance of concrete infrastructure, deforestation, and vehicular emission is amplifying heat stress. Encroachments on natural drainage system is yet another issue. Illegal construction on the floodplains and drainage channels exacerbate flooding. And then aging flood protection infrastructure. Many old embankments along the Indus River and its tributaries are unable to withstand extreme weather events. So a critical issue we have repeatedly observed is that the climate change considerations are often overlooked in development planning. As a result, our infrastructure and urban system remain highly vulnerable to climate shocks, further amplifying the risks posed by extreme weather events. Addressing these challenges require an urgent shift toward climate resilient planning, sustainable urban development, and proactive adaptation strategies. One of the biggest challenges is the lack of climate consideration in urban development. Government of Sindh has taken several steps to strengthen this climate resilience, particularly through the Directorate of Urban Policy and Strategic Planning, which is preparing the development master plans for Sindh secondary cities. Till now, this department has prepared master plans for 17 district headquarters with 8 notified by the government, while 14 cities are in progress and set for completion by 2026. These master plans focus on urban resilience and climate adaptation, emphasizing sustainable land use, climate resilient infrastructure, efficient transportation, water management, disaster preparedness, environmental sustainability, and smart city solutions. We are also facing the challenges of implementation of these master plans that will be highlighted by the DG Urban Center over here. So cities are both a challenge and a solution in the fight against climate change. Since urban centers must take the lead in adopting climate smart policies, clean technologies, and resilient urban design. Collaboration between government, private sector, academia, and civil society is critical to ensuring sustainable and livable cities for future generations. Together, we can transform challenges into opportunities and make Sindh cities a model for climate resilience and green urbanization. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I would now like to invite Dr. Amar Masood, who's an old friend of IGP, to say a few words.
Uh, yes, thank you, Hina, and thank you everybody for being here today. It's really a pleasure to be outside Lahore. Honestly, I think let me introduce myself. I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Urban Unit. I too am a civil servant, but my great distinction is that I have been the Chief Executive Officer of the Urban Unit for the last 4 years. So there are only, I think, one or two positions which have lasted so long without the incumbent changing. I don't want to name those positions, otherwise I would be in very, very big trouble. But that was the great benefit that I had when I worked at the urban unit, was that initially I did not know much about cities, although I have a PhD in that. But I honestly, the ground situation in Pakistan is so challenging and so diverse that I think my tenure at the urban unit really educated me a second time around as far as cities are concerned. I thank IGC for having this very interesting seminar. I would request the audience to stick on, and not to leave, because some of the upcoming sessions, spatial vulnerabilities, data-driven planning and development, uh, you know, these are good words. I would call them buzzwords, but I would also try to explain what are the challenges when you try, when you when we talk about evidence-based decision making. But does the government actually do evidence-based decision making, or is it simply a word which is attached to a document and simply sort of sanitizes it by saying that this is evidence-based, decision making? That's a very, very big challenge. I would also like to emphasize, I think Dr. Ijaz also pointed out, this fact, but I would point it out more emphatically, is that the urban transition in Pakistan has already started and it's increasing, but we do not have any urban vision in this country, either at a local level, at a regional level, or at a provincial or a national level. And I think that is one element which we feel is really lacking, and that's why uh, what you see over here is intellectuals and IBA, IGC, LUMS, urban unit of SIN. We are all working in silos. We know what our local problems are, but we are not even sharing ideas. So one of the biggest takeaway of today's seminar is that we, perhaps urban unit being based in Lahore, we can talk about what we experienced in Lahore, and we want to really hear from what are the issues in Karachi, because exchange of ideas at the urban level is something which is sorely lacking in this country. And while we have a lot of intellectual firepower to actually address these challenges, but I think we have been unable to connect the dots, so to speak. And the aim and objective of these seminars is to have that catalytic reaction somewhere. So that is the idea there of actually stepping out of Lahore. uh, Personally, Hina, I had become a bit tired of addressing the Lahore audience. I knew what the questions were, and I knew what the answers were to be given. So once again, it is great to be here in Karachi, and I would like to thank IGC and IBA once again. But this is a very, very important seminar. It is about ideas and issues which are so critical in government policy making and decision making, but they are not talked about a lot. They are basically cities, climate change, and data. I think these are three elements that we have a lot of information to share about, but when you try to actually translate it into some sort of a policy document, or some sort of an action on the ground, that is where we feel that we are really, really struggling. And the idea is really not to simply show you the data, or show you the spatial vulnerability, or show you the capacity that what we can do with data, but also is to share ideas and challenges on how to use that data to implement something for the public good. And I think that is what the prime objective of all these seminars are. So, we've already started late. I don't want to sort of belabor this because I have a session of that I have to do myself. Thank you once again, and thank you, Hina, for hosting this. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think now we can officially start our first session. I will just introduce our moderator, Dr. Nausheen Anwar, who is an urban planner, and I think the Karachi audience is very familiar with her work. She's a professor at IBA, and she's also a founder and director of the Karachi Urban Lab, and she's also a fellow at IDS for the Sussex Intercities Cluster. And she works on urban issues and its intersection with climate change as well. And before I ask her to take over the session, we just have a short framing presentation to just lay out the key issues, and I'm going to make it quick because I do realize that we're running behind time. So if you can just open the presentation. Just move on to the next slide. Okay, so we all know that Pakistan is urban growth is very fast paced. Almost 40% of our population is urban, and this number is expected to go to 59% by 2050. There are lots of reasons that push urbanization at such a fast rate. Of course, the natural population growth rate is also high. It's 2.55% per year. But a lot of it also has to do with rural to urban migration. Today, almost 25 million people in Pakistan live in 8 largest cities of Pakistan. And climate shock is further pushing rural population into urban spaces. Between 15 to 30% of the population in major cities is now composed of migrants. And there's added complexity in this because a large chunk of our urban workforce is informal, and they're even more vulnerable to climate impact. Challenges of urbanization are, of course, intensified by climate change. We all know recently a report ranked Karachi as one of the least livable cities in the world, ranking it 169 out of 173. Lahore and Karachi have been topping the charts for the world's most polluted cities. Karachi adds almost 15% to Pakistan's total greenhouse gas emissions, and it generates 14,000 to 16,000 tons of waste daily, which is around 0.44 kg of waste per person per day. But we also know that cities are very important for Pakistan's economy. They contribute considerably to GDP and federal tax revenue. They're also important hubs for trade and investment. And climate action in cities is not only important for national efforts to address climate change, but also global efforts. So cities do provide a unique opportunity for scalable solutions to climate adaptation and mitigation. The idea of this discussion is to focus on 3 core vulnerabilities: urban flooding, heat waves, and air pollution. And I'm just going to give an overview of these issues, and then Dr. Nausheen can delve into this in detail. So heat waves, by 2070, the average yearly temperatures in Pakistan could actually reach that of African Sahara. The urban heat island effect is making our cities warmer than surrounding rural areas. And due to this impact, the temperature in Karachi is estimated to be 5 to 7 degrees higher compared to its rural suburbs, which also leads to more health problems, and then, it creates a health burden. We all know the heat waves in Karachi, and that they lead to a lot of fatalities. The 2015 heat wave led to a loss of lives, 1,200 lives. The second vulnerability we want to focus on is urban flooding. And there are many reasons that drive this. It's high precipitation, poor drainage, urban sprawl, loss of green spaces. We can now observe more frequent short duration heavy rainfalls that lead to higher water runoffs. The urban heat island effects further intensifies this impact. Also, the low quality of infrastructure worsens this. Between the 1980s and 2020, Karachi's urban area expanded by over 200%, almost 300%, and in that process there was an elimination of almost 870 kilometers worth of natural streams, obstruction or elimination. And Karachi is now the second largest settlement area, has the second largest settlement area exposed to pluvial flooding. And the third issue that we want to focus on is air pollution, which costs Pakistan up to 6.5% of its GDP. It's driven by all types of pollution: industrial pollution, vehicular emissions, unsustainable urban practices, and it also contributes to carbon emissions, so it has a direct link with climate change. So policies that are promoting energy efficiency and renewable energy can help address both air pollution and climate change. So just to give you an idea, this was a recent study that was actually, in fact, done with the assistance of Urban Unit, and it shows that the greenhouse gas inventory of Karachi city, and you can see the total greenhouse gas emissions by sector. So manufacturing industries make the largest contributions, followed actually by residential buildings, which contribute almost 18% to greenhouse gas emissions. Then we just, and then there's certain cross-cutting things that we would like to also focus on. One is that climate vulnerabilities disproportionately impact the poor. And, in fact, studies have shown that across developing countries, the bottom 40% income groups can suffer up to 20% higher income losses compared to wealthier populations. We saw how the 2022 floods pushed a large chunk of our population into poverty. Half of Karachi's urban population lives in urban settlements, so they're more vulnerable to floods and heat waves. The poor also lack access to financial resources. And informal workers are, of course, also more vulnerable to climate change. Okay, and then we also want to look at how climate change intensifies vulnerabilities in agriculture-dependent small cities that are reliant on agriculture, and how rising temperatures and unpredictable weather patterns also affect crop yields, access to water, and then when agricultural productivity declines, these rural inhabitants are forced to move into cities in search of jobs. Now in my last slide, so these are just some, I'm not going to go into this in detail, I'll just leave it there if you want to have a look. These are just the different pathways that we will explore while we make our, go into a discussion in these sessions and see what can be some, practical solutions to addressing these issues, which include improving governance, accessing climate finance, and then prioritizing vulnerable populations, and of course using, encouraging data-driven climate decision making. So on that note, I'm just going to end the presentation and ask Dr. Nausheen Anwar to take over.
Thank you very much, Mona. Hello? Yeah, great, it's working. Although I shout a lot, just like you, Lubna, as a professor. Thank you so much, and it's great to see familiar faces from our Karachi lot. So I'm not going to give my 2 cents worth right now. I will towards the end of this particular session. So I will start right away by introducing Dr. Imtiaz Bhatti, who is our keynote speaker today. He is a senior civil servant, currently serving as the Director General of Urban and Regional Policy and Strategic Planning at the Planning and Development Board Sindh, a very powerful organization. Dr. Bhatti has a PhD in public policy from the George Washington University, where he has specialized in public finance. He is also a visiting faculty member at IBA and has worked on development projects with organizations such as the ADB, USAID, the World Bank, with an extensive experience in finding inclusive solutions for urban challenges. So, Bhatti sahab, aap 5 minutes ke liye bolenge, although in my experience, keynote speeches go on for half an hour, at which I said this to Hina and she said, no way. So we're going to do 5 minutes and then we will have time to go into a deeper discussion thereafter. Yeah. And alongside this, I would like to also introduce Mr. Waqar Hussain Pulpoto, who is going to be essentially the key discussant. He currently serves as the Director for Sindh Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, also a very powerful entity, and has over 15 years of experience working at the organization. So, Bhatti Saab, let's dive in.
Thank you very much, Madam Noshin Sahaba. 5 minutes will be too short because I was given to understand that I will have to make a presentation. So I worked late at night to put this together, and my labor should not go waste.
So now you can interject. I've got the time.
10 minutes. So okay. So thank you very much. As Director General of Urban Policy in this province, which comes under this development, Planning and Development Department. Until they host the presentation, I will just give you a quick review what we do at this directorate. The directorate is concerned with creating master plans and plans of cities that are identified as secondary cities. And secondary city defined by the World Bank is a city with population between 100,000 and 1 million. So all cities, there are only 2 cities bigger than this category, Karachi and Hyderabad, that are not in our ambit, but we are working on almost all cities in the province. We have, so far as Jawad already mentioned, created 17 master plans of secondary cities, and most of them are district headquarters towns. And then we are working on another batch of 14 cities. But since in the 2023 census, we learned that many more cities have come into that bracket of secondary cities because their populations have increased from 100,000 to between 100,000 and 1 million. So there are almost 25 more cities that come in that ambit. We'll be working on that. Okay, so this is the presentation. I think this works like this. So good morning. Thank you very much, everybody, and I'm thankful to all of the organizers of this program for organizing this, and I'm thankful to Ejaz Nabi Sahab, Lubna Naz, Umar Masood Sahab, Noshin Sahaba for giving me a chance. And the key word today is spatial vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities in terms of space, and that means mostly urban areas. And so another key word that comes with it is resilience. So first I start with what is spatial vulnerabilities. Susceptibility of specific urban areas to adverse events, and that is influenced by geographical, socioeconomic, and environmental factors. These profoundly affect impact urban dwellers. You can see in the picture we have some developing countries and one from probably this is Auckland. So you can see the skyline. So those skylines that they have created is not a miracle. Actually, they have planned well. The special, अच्छा उधर change नहीं हुआ. That's it. Thank you. So spatial vulnerabilities examples, most importantly, flood-prone areas. Within cities, we have low-lying areas, depressions, and some areas, localities remain submerged after heavy rains for weeks. Then, luckily, we are not in the earthquake zone, but some of our cities in northern areas are prone to earthquakes. We have had devastating earthquakes in Islamabad, Kashmir, and other areas. Karachi is near the fault zone. We experience tremors off and on, but who knows? We are not prepared for it if something catastrophic happens. Pollution, then we know that there are two types of pollution, and air pollution, water pollution. So this is the trend in our urban areas, and I think everywhere, but mostly in our cities are surrounded by industrial areas. We created site areas. Site is industrial estate areas. So to attract investment, we set up site areas nearby cities, and some of them have now become part of in the middle of the cities, like Korangi site area. So what happens? They create economic activities, but ultimately another corollary, which is very dangerous, is pollution. Pollution to air, pollution to water. And when we have this extreme weather effect that combines with this thing, that we cannot have good words for it. So regions lacking in essential infrastructure, which are not ready, and regions means urban areas at the moment we are concerned with, which are not ready when they are hit with floods, pollution, and lack of planning. All these combined create a devastating effect. So this is a chart that I came across, which is from World Economic Forum Global Risk Perception Survey. This shows that extreme weather among the risk factors has been upgraded to number 1. There were several extreme risk factors they had in their repertoire, and extreme weather is number 1 now. Pollution is at the moment at number 10. So as I've already mentioned, pollution and some of the extreme weather effects are natural and coming from the system beyond our control, but we can prepare for them. So this is City Livability Index, which comes from Economist Intelligence Unit. And you can see the most livable city at the moment is Vienna. And unfortunately, we fall in Karachi at 169 among the livable cities. Dhaka, Lagos are in the same range. So Karachi is one of the bottom 5. I need to better clicker, or something went wrong. Okay, my next slide is about climate risk index. So that comes from German Watch, an organization in Germany, and they have this list of countries. Those are ranked in terms of climate. Luckily, Pakistan is a little below this top 10, but the color lines in those horizontal bars show that fatalities and losses of GDP. If we plan well, we can avoid falling into top 10. Next, yeah. Spatial vulnerabilities have, back please, have impacts. First impact, that is indirect, is inequality in terms of wealth and income. Then societal polarization. This is also pollution. I think noise pollution is also a big issue. Okay. So what happens that we don't plan, we have flooded urban areas, we have extreme weather conditions and heat waves that accentuates inequalities that we already suffer from in our society, and also other social maladies like social polarization, crime, and illicit economic opportunities. So, and finally, add to it this demographic trends, aging population, all these combined together that affect our economy, our socioeconomic status. Next, please.
But I'm going to be rude.
Okay. Yes.
Speed things up just a tiny bit. We can come back to some of these slides even later if you want.
Yeah, I have 3 more slides.
Great.
So, we need institutional collaboration, and that collaboration, we cannot tackle these challenges in isolation. So, we have to come together. We have to extend our hands to civil society, government organizations, industry, and everybody. And in city like Karachi, we have several organizations that own lands. So unfortunately, in this conference, many of them should have been invited, especially landowning organizations, DHA, cantonments, and various development agencies, because we cannot do without them. We have to bring them on the same page. And there was a conference in Beach Lagiri a few days ago. I missed all of them. And if my organization ever will, and we are planning after 2 months, a similar conference, I will make it a point to invite them. Because at least we can sensitize them. And they may have their reasons, defense-related reasons. But what will we do of defense when our country will be submerged? I got it short and go directly to the conclusion slides. She has been very rude. Yeah. So what we have to do, collaborate. These are the 3 words. We cannot play in silos. And collaboration has to be created. Not the ordinary type of collaboration that we have been doing within the government. Collaboration with civil society, academia. This is a good thing. That an academic institution has taken the lead. Academia, and also collaboration with industry. So these 3 type of collaborations and sit together, and we have stacks, all of us, in this. And green spaces, there was a discussion on the master plan of Karachi. So they came to my office and asked me, what are your views? I said, in your initial report, what are your plans about greening Karachi? So they said Karachi doesn't have much space to create parks inside. I said, take a bird's eye view, go up and see the open spaces in cantonment areas, in defense controlled areas. Then what is this jail doing in the middle of city? So I asked that international consultant, what would you be doing about this central jail? So there is an already plan to move this. Okay, this is the just 10% of the thing. You'll move it. What will you do? What is your plan? How will you beneficially utilize this space that will be created after moving the jail? So he didn't. He was he had no clue. I said that make a plan for these things. GR colony. I'm a civil servant. I have a flat there. Okay. So, but why there should be 2-acre bungalows in GR colonies when high-rise plazas can help and give me a better flat? So those type of things. The plan I will cut in the end. The idea that I gave to him was that come up with a plan. Say, for example, Central Jail, you create 3 zones within it. 30% go commercial to pay for the relocation of the jail. 70%, 60% become green and open space. 10% for government use, offices, etc. Thank you very much.
So, Waqar Hussain Saab can move to
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I am in fact grateful to Madam Lubna Naaz Sahiba and the representative of CDPR who have given me an opportunity to talk about the vulnerability. Before I talk to the topic, because I think still most of us may not be knowing about the climate change directorate and what government of Sindh in fact has done so far and to what level we have done. In fact, after when the national climate change policy was introduced to all the provinces in 2015, it was 24th April, all the provinces of Pakistan were set to implement the first national climate change policy 2012 and its framework was notified in 2013. After that, every province has some sort of setup, provincial implementation sort of committees. At that time, there was a one provincial implementation committee, which was headed by the chairman PND. At that time, there was ACS, Additional Chief Secretary, PND, and the relevant all line organizations, around 13, one of them was Environment as well. So they were part and parcel of for implementing that national climate change policy. During the second meeting of that national climate change policy, it was decided that we should have a separate provincial policy. Why? Because although that policy is aligned with the national climate change policy 2012, but there are certain issues, very few issues, but very important issues. Number one is sea intrusion, which is the major issue of Sindh province, was not addressed properly in that policy. And second was in Sindh, there are different resources, particularly the marine and fisheries resources, marine and inland. So both resources were not clearly defined over there. The role was not defined. And then that PIC, Provincial Implementation Committee, decided to give the task to the lead Pakistan. And during 2016, they initiated the draft, and finally it took a long time. Finally, in 2022, Sindh province has got its own Sindh climate change policy. It was July 2022. And when our department, in fact, earlier was Environment, Forest and Wildlife Department. It was renamed as, in 2016, Environment, Climate Change and Coastal Development Department. So that administrative department shows that there should be some 3 directorates. One directorate was missing, that was DOCC, Directorate of Climate Change. So Directorate of Climate Change was established in 2022 March. After establishment of that 2022 March, it was actually like on ad hoc basis कोई हम जैसे करते हैं ना किसी को चार्ज दे दिया अभी भी ऐसा ही चल रहा है तो anyway at least वो शुरू हो गया and then of course the other actions also started. Then the second action was the action plan for implementation of that committee. That is, a draft is prepared. We have also, Sindh has notified NDC's committee. 2 meetings have already been held under that NDC committee headed by the Secretary Environment. And there is another, Pakistan Climate Change Authority has been notified recently. They have directed all the provinces again to have a working group in order to implement those directions from the that authority which every province was supposed to take. And for that, we need to have a working group. So that working group has been very recently notified, and that working group is again headed by the Secretary Environment and Climate Change. I'm working as a director in EPSM, not as a Director General or Director of Climate Change. So whatever the knowledge I have, I would like, and whatever the till to date knowledge related to DOCC, I would like to share. No doubt, a lot of the vulnerabilities have already been discussed. There may be a bit repetition. Actually, these vulnerabilities, climate change vulnerabilities in the cities is very well known to all Pakistani people, particularly since last 10 or 15 years, particularly for the Sindh, if I say. From 2010 and 11 floods till 2022, every person, even he or she is living in rural area, they are now aware that something is different than the previous. Change of weather patterns, rise in temperature, rise in sea level, cause what? So many things. So everyone has to play its own role. The major, if I say main climate change vulnerabilities in the city, that is no doubt we have already experienced heat waves, heat islands. That is 2015 is one of the most dangerous जिसमें सबसे ज़्यादा मौत हुई. But later on, government of Sindh managed it very well. And you might have observed several times heat waves, but similar number of casualties are not there. Flooding and rising of sea level. Most of the people have talked about flooding. In my opinion, that may differ from all of you. मैं floods को opportunity समझता हूँ. मेरे हिसाब से floods को अभी तक हम opportunity की तौर पे नहीं लिया. We need to focus more on water conservation, water saving, rainwater harvesting or कुछ भी हो. वो वक्त की ज़रूरत है. Now you can see there's a rift between the provinces. But why don't we take that issue that serious? I attended, I could not take the name of that 21 grade officer of Sindh, stated around 5 years back that when the floods come, why don't you conserve that water? Why don't you save that water? Why riverine, there are different types of forest, riverine forest, rangeland forest, and agriculture forest, social forestry. So if our riverine forests are rich enough, then we will also be capable enough to handle this water. I am basically an agri-engineer. We have been taught during my graduation, a professor says, there's no efficient irrigation without proper drainage, agricultural drainage. The 2022 floods, that is the major cause is the improper drainage system. You might have observed, even I cannot take the name, but all those who are sitting in the legislative assemblies, they are landowners. उन्होंने क्या किया था? ड्रेनेज पूरा नेचुरल सिस्टम ही आपने उसको बंद कर दिया, तो वो अल्टीमेटली आएगा तो अर्बन एरिया में, कहीं ना कहीं किसी शहर को तबाह करेगा. तो वो हम उन बेसिक चीज़ों को भी पकड़े. तो मैं ख़ासतौर पे फ्लडिंग के लिए इसलिए फोकस कर रहा था. और अब दौर, now we are facing water issue. Even yesterday I stuck up about 2 hours only because of the water strike was there at Korangi. वो रोड ब्लॉक किया हुआ था कि पानी उनको नहीं मिल रहा था. मैं क्लिफ्टन में रहता हूँ. जो टैंकर पहले अभी तक वो सिचुएशन विद इन ऑफ मंथ्स यू विल ऑब्जर्व, जो टैंकर 15,000 में है वो हमारे यहाँ डिमांड कर रहा है अभी 18,000। ये मैं अभी कह रहा हूँ, ये 20,000 इसी साल करेंगे क्लिफ्टन और बीच। तो हम इसको सीरियस लें। स्टॉर्म एक्सट्रीम वेदर इवेंट्स भी हैं, इसमें भी एवरीबॉडी नोज। वाटर स्ट्रेस एंड स्केरसिटी की ये मैं बात कर रहा हूँ। वैसे मैं पॉलिसी पे आखिर में आऊँगा कि पॉलिसी सिर्फ अर्बन पॉलिसी को क्या मतलब सिंध क्लाइमेट चेंज पॉलिसी क्या कहती है। एयर पोल्यूशन पे बात हो चुकी है। हेल्थ रिस्क के भी ऑलमोस्ट अर्बन पॉपुलेशन फेस इंक्रीजिंग हेल्थ रिस्क ड्यू टू क्लाइमेट चेंज, and that is mainly because of the higher temperatures, poor air quality and increased vector-borne diseases. Loss of biodiversity is also known. Unfortunately, हमारे यहाँ कुछ शायद हैं अर्बन फॉरेस्ट कराची में, जितने होना चाहिए, जितना कवर ग्रीन कवर होना चाहिए वो नहीं है. Urban areas are often rely on these natural ecosystems like those parks, wetlands and even forests. We need to improve air water quality, providing recreational spaces. ये जो हमारी मैंने पहले हीट आइलैंड्स की बात की थी, इसको अनफॉर्चुनेटली आप भले किसी एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को कह दें, वो उसका नहीं जिम्मेवार हो सकती, चाहे वो सिंध बिल्डिंग कंट्रोल अथॉरिटी हो, चाहे EPA हो, चाहे कोई और ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, until unless everybody is not playing the proper role. आप क्लिफ्टन क्या हर जगह पे जाएंगे, बिल्डिंग इस तरह बनी है, कहाँ से पास होगी एयर, कहाँ से अगर सर्दी हो तो धूप की ज़रूरत है तो धूप मिलनी ही नहीं है. तो वो ऐसी चीज़ें उनको हमें ये जो अर्बन पॉलिसी, आप पॉलिसी मेकर्स आप लोग हैं, आप जाहिर है बेहतर मुझसे समझते हैं, तो हम ऐसी पॉलिसी हमारे यहाँ शायद है भी, फिर असल चीज़ हम भी जिम्मेदार, मैं भी जिम्मेदार कि उस पॉलिसीज़ की इम्प्लीमेंटेशन इज़ द मेजर इशू. मैं कमिंग बैक टू द व्हाट प्रोविंशियल पॉलिसी सेज अबाउट दिस अर्बन प्लानिंग के हवाले से, क्योंकि ये जो डॉक्यूमेंट 2022 में बना है, अब इसका एक्शन प्लान भी हो रहा है, मगर इवन it was the draft, we were implementing, we were taking adaptation action, we are taking mitigation action by the public sector, by the government sector. I will point out those. But let me say what that climate change policy, Sindh climate change policy 2022 says about the urban planning. It says that urbanization must be planned and urban plans must be implemented. Failure to do so will result in negative social, environmental and economic consequences. Sindh has the highest urbanization rate in Pakistan, everybody knows it. Overall it's 40%, but in Sindh it's about 47, like that, yeah, 46 something. So it's a land, our land resources, I mean since land resources have already been degraded to a greater extent, its water resources have been depleted besides, and seriously a salinization and waterlogging issue is also in the rural areas. Fertile soils have been deteriorated, and no doubt infrastructures are also being disturbed. And मैं ख़ास तौर पे ये प्लानिंग से रिलेटेड बताऊंगा, जो फर्टाइल लैंड की बात की, मीरपुर खास कर लेते हैं, लाड़काना में भी अभी रिंग रोड बन रहा है, लाहौर में रिंग रोड आपको बना रहे हैं, उधर अभी से आबादियाँ शुरू हो गई, एयरपोर्ट बना ही नहीं है, इस्लामाबाद का अभी से हाउसिंग स्कीम शुरू, तो क्या प्लानिंग होगी. वेरी सॉरी टू से, मैं खुद मैं जनरल बात कर रहा हूँ. तो कैपिटल सिटी के मैं मिसाल दे रहा हूँ आपको, तो थिंक अबाउट दी अदर सिटीज़. एनीवे हमें, मैं मीरपुर खास का इसलिए वो मिसाल देकर आधे में बात छोड़ दी थी. मीरपुर खास कंट्रोल एयर, हु एवर हैज गॉन देयर, आई थिंक ही और शी मस्ट बी नोइंग कि उधर की फर्टाइल लैंड ज़्यादा है. अगर आप फर्टाइल लैंड्स के ऑर्चर्ड्स ख़त्म करके सोसाइटीज़ ले आएँ, सखर में तो किसी को आप देख लेंगे खुजल के दरख्त काटे हुए नज़र आएंगे, उधर सोसाइटीज़ बन गई. ऑर्चर्ड्स ख़त्म करके आप बना रहे हैं सोसाइटी. इस तरह की ये प्लानिंग कब तक चलेगी? इनफैक्ट हमें इसको ज़्यादा अब मैं सिर्फ आ रहा हूँ क्लाइमेट रिस्क एंड just one minute. Because we want to open it up for discussion. Yeah. And we can bring back some of your thoughts. Just what Sindh climate change policy says and how it addresses the climate risk to the urban areas. It says that there are certain strategic objectives. For example, it says develop a profile of risk around the climate change on urban areas, update town planning in accordance with the changing climate, create awareness among the public regarding limitation of natural resources, manage the existing urban framework, manage the municipal and industrial waste. At the last, I would just one request again. Although we are talking about urban development, but I would say we should focus for the urban development to prioritize our provincial budget, provincial development schemes to the rural areas. आपने माइग्रेशन को कैसे रोकेंगे? उधर उनको कुछ देंगे ही नहीं तो वो आएंगे, उनका कसूर नहीं है, किसी को रोक नहीं सकते आप. सो वी क्या कितना पोर्टफोलियो हमारा एडीपीज का अब जब भी अभी भी देख लें, कराची की स्कीम्स होंगी, हैदराबाद की होंगी, व्हाई नॉट अदर? चट्टा में क्या है, सिजावल में क्या है, और कश्मीर में क्या है? तो वी शुड गिव प्रायोरिटी टू दोज रूरल एरियाज. उसको उनको अपलिफ्ट करेंगे तो ये अर्बनाइजेशन का ये बेसिक रूट है, वो उसको आप एड्रेस कर रहे हैं. थैंक यू वेरी मच. आई हैव टेकन मच टाइम.
No, thank you, Vakar Saab. We will come back to many of the points that Mati Saab and you have discussed. So I'd like to open this up for discussion, but before we do that, I'd like to put in my 2 cents worth, which I said that I would at the beginning. So, बुनियादी तौर पे vulnerability क्या चीज़ है? I'd like to start off with this. Vulnerability isn't just about spatial vulnerability, it's about history. History is a vulnerability in the context of the region in which we live. और वकार साहब ने एक बहुत important point जाहिर किया, वो drainage के बारे में, which is about regional and city planning essentially. और सिंध में वो जो मसला है लेफ्ट बैंक ड्रेनेज का, तो मेरा एक नया प्रोजेक्ट शुरू हुआ है 4 साल का जेकोबाद में, where myself and colleagues at King's College London, one of whom is a climate scientist, are going to be studying what it means to adapt, cope and be resilient in the context of new thresholds of not just heat waves but chronic heat, when you start thinking about just ambient temperatures, not even WGBTs, of 52 Celsius, 53 Celsius. And this is not like, yes, Sibby is hotter or whatever, but let's take Jayagawad as a case study because it's really a poster child now. And one of the interesting things that I've learned is that one of the things that even though climate scientists in Pakistan, like Faisal Saab, who heads the Pakistan Meteorology Department, says that actually maximum temperatures are falling on heat, but it's the minimum that is rising. So how does that minimum that is rising actually interplay with the issue of humidity, which is the one factor that we often don't talk about in relation to resilience, adaptation, coping, and so forth, right? Humidity is the stealth-like killer, especially lethal levels of humidity. Now, what does humidity have to do with the drainage issue? Very interesting. So, जो डेसी साहब हैं जेकोबाद में, जिनसे मैंने 2 साल पहले बात करी और अब दोबारा पिछले हफ्ते विजिट करके आई हूँ, और कुछ और लोगों से भी बात करी, जो NGOs और NGOs हैं जो ऑन ग्राउंड हीट पर काम कर रही हैं, वो कह रही है जी ह्यूमिडिटी राइज कर रही है जेकोबाद में क्योंकि ड्रेनेज का इशू और मसला बहुत बड़ा हो गया है, क्योंकि जो एग्रीकल्चरल फील्ड्स हैं वहाँ से पानी जाता ही नहीं है. एंड दैट वाटर इज एक्चुअली नाउ बिगिनिंग to contribute to the humidity levels. So these are scientific issues, right? So when we start talking about evidence-based policy impacts, where is the science talk in all of this? One of the most important things that we are actually not hitting upon, in addition to how the entire bureaucratic structure of how we talk about climate needs an overhaul in terms of our languages, etc., is really the science talk, which needs to now meld into the broader discussions that social scientists and practitioners and heads of the World Bank and representatives of the ADB and so forth are bringing to the forefront. That if we are going to talk about city and regional planning, whether it's the context of Karachi or the broader dynamics of Sindh, what are climate scientists actually saying? And then how do we conjoin the data that is appearing at the national level to start thinking about what is actually happening at the urban or the city level, or even the rural context, right? Because climate scientists are modelers here, right? And their models predict, and that predictive aspect has a lot of complexity, and many times are also wrong. मगर जो शहरों के लेवल पे जो हमारी डाटा है और evidence है scientific aspect से वो बहुत limited है. So we have data on poverty, and one of the things, I mean, this is about cities and climate change, but we also know the vulnerabilities have deep, deep histories. And that climate change impacts compound poverty, compound vulnerability, compound resilience issues, and so forth, right? And then the cascading effects on infrastructure. Yes, we can take advantage of flooding, but in a city like Karachi, where there are huge infrastructural impediments and massive drainage issues, how do we take advantage of that? We can talk about rainwater harvesting, which is happening in places like Mexico City. There's no question about it. Lots of evidence over there. But then the 2022 floods, drainage issue, but also climate change related, right? Unprecedented precipitation. How do you take advantage of that, right? These are ethical issues. These are also structural dynamics. And then, of course, the technology and the science, and how does it all feed together? So these are just my 2 cents worth. Take it, leave it, whatever. And now let's open up the floor for discussion and hopefully something productive. Not that the conversations haven't been. And Bhatti sir, by the way, आपकी एक जो slide है जिसमें आप वो circles दिखाते हैं सारी चीज़ों की, उसमें जो एक circle है, which I believe should be at the center, is health and well-being. That in the context of talking about vulnerability and poverty, how can we center stage health and well-being issues? So ये भी एक historical fact है कि पाकिस्तान का जो पूरा जो expenditure है budget wise, health पर तो वैसे ही बहुत कम खर्चा होता है. और इसके साथ अब हम climate के साथ जब जोड़ते हैं तो मैं आपको एक बहुत छोटी सी मिसाल देती हूँ कि medical sciences और social sciences में जो research हो रही है, for instance on nutrition and its relationship with heat stress and migration and displacement, people are talking about syndemics. You know, why is it that in the context of global urban south, there are certain kinds of diseases that cluster in specific locations and persist, right? And how do those diseases that repeat themselves in the context of those clusters, what is their relationship with social and structural dynamics? The relationship between the bio and the social as a syndemic. So we need to kind of start, you know, leveraging this kind of information, scaling it up to inform our health policy impacts also, because health is, I mean, in mental health पे यहाँ पर एक अकबर ज़ैदी के साथ अभी 3-4 दिन पहले एक सेशन हुआ था कि mental health पर तो हमारा कोई conversation ही नहीं है और उसमें long standing issues है multiple, तो वो बहुत परक चीज़ों से जुड़ा हुआ है, climate के साथ भी, structural inequalities के साथ भी. मेरे ख्याल में तो वो जो health और well-being का है ना circle जो आपका बड़ा अच्छा वो center में होना चाहिए, and that should be informing so much of how we think about policy impacts and urban planning and so forth. Yeah, okay, I've said too much. Yes, thank you. G, Nadeem, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Nausheen Anwar Sahaba, that was extremely well put. मेरी एक गुजारिश होगी कि हमने यहाँ पर कुछ जर्नलिस्ट को भी बुलाया हुआ है, और मकसद यही है कि इस डिस्कशन को, ताकि हम अपनी इन्फॉर्म्ड डिसीजन खुद ले सकें, इस डिस्कशन को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए we should elicit their views on how they can help, especially how data and evidence will help them in taking some of the messages that come out of these discussions forward. So it'd be terrific to have senior journalists here also to give a few suggestions and remarks in that context. And I have Zofeen Ibrahim and Khurram Hussain, they're both here. It would be terrific to get their reactions to these conversations.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. शुक्र है कोई नहीं हो रहा है. I think that आप लोग जो बातें करते हैं वो थोड़ी मुश्किल होती हैं, because the kind of words you use, I like to call them, you're very verbose, I'm afraid, and हमको हर दफ़ा समझ नहीं आती as journalists. However, I think data is very important, because data के through हम एक evidence दे सकते हैं to our readers that what you're saying is the truth, and that readers should believe in you and then act accordingly. However, data has to make sense to us. We are not all scientists. Numbers समझने में बहुत मुश्किल होती है. Numbers do not always add up also, because sometimes numbers are different from different organizations. जैसे कि कराची is a very complex city. To understand Karachi is very difficult. मुझे तो बहुत साल लग गए हैं. फिर पता चलता है districts towns बन जाती हैं, towns कुछ और बन जाते हैं, फिर वापस districts बन जाती हैं, and then you have to relearn everything. Anyway, I mean, I would say as a writer, as a journalist, that if you tell us that instead of tonnage के हिसाब से, for example, if we talk about waste, if you tell us कि इतने plane loads of garbage 1 minute में sea में जाते हैं, तो मुझे जल्दी समझ आ जाएगी, because मुझे एक vision आ जाएगा कि इतना plane load इतना होता है, instead of if you tell me tonnage या इतना tons जाते हैं. Maybe खुरम को ज़्यादा समझ आ जाए, मुझे नहीं समझ आती. I also feel that science needs to be given a human face for the readers to feel that empathy and to feel that, okay, you are also in it, you are also part of it, and you can be part of the solution. So I just have to say this, that if you can make it, and I think journalists can do this job very well, if you and me, we can work together, I think we can make sense of this very complex issue, and we can provide that knowledge is given in that manner, and we can work, if we can work together. Thank you.
Thanks, Nosheen. So, I'll just contribute a couple of small observations here, because I came to listen, not to speak. But nevertheless, I think what would help in a more where journalists can make more of a contribution to environmental and climate-related conversation is if there is more data available. And on that, I would like to see two areas in particular. One is more data to measure, more granular measurements of climate and environmental changes taking place. So, for example, how many sensors are there installed around the city of Karachi, for example? I'd like to know. Measuring temperature, PM 2.5, giving me readings on rainfall. 3. Nosheen is holding up.
3 official ones.
3 official ones.
Right.
Okay.
And then many that are populated by some study.
I would think that. Sorry. Is SEPA, right? I would think, now I'm just running with common sense here, Yasir and Nosheen would know better, but I'm running with common sense. I would think a city the size of Karachi should have about 300, right? I mean, am I right? A ballpark, right? So we are so far away from where we need to be that we can credibly say we are moving into the future, a highly uncertain future, as our keynote presentation pointed out as well. Number one risk being climate risk on a worldwide basis, with Pakistan being at the forefront of that risk. We are moving into that future blind. Without data, without measurements of what exactly is the nature of this climate change, we are literally just sort of groping in the dark as we move into a highly uncertain future. So let's see if we can bring about an improvement in that. Number 2, I'd like to see improved data gathering and reporting on the impact. For example, if I were to ask you simple questions, I mean, I wish Murtaza were there. If I were to ask you simple questions, what is the trend line in respiratory ailments reported around the city of Karachi over the past 10 years? Do you have that data available, or will you have to generate it? I'm sure you can generate it, but even that will take a long time. Such data should be more readily available. It should be gathered on a regular, in real time, and perhaps being reported in real time. If I were to ask you what is the trend line in the reporting of heat-related conditions in the hospitals in the city? What is the burden of climate and environment burden on the healthcare system of the city? Right now, there is no data, I would think. But such data can be generated, it can be maintained, it can be reported. And I think it should be. Lastly, Pulpoto Saab, you said something which was really, I really appreciate you for saying that they are destroying orchards to make societies. I think how we treat our environment is key here. But, sir, I do remind you that when the Malir Expressway was being built, the environmental impact assessment was deeply problematic for that project. Objections were raised by people who were affectees of that project. And in that process, the Sindh Environmental Protection Agency was an enabler of bulldozing over those objections and enabling the project rather than taking the environmental considerations more seriously. So I'm really glad that you said what you did say, but it's very important that civil servants such as yourselves really sort of perform the role that they are supposed to perform and ensure that proper environmental and climate data is maintained and also that environmental impact assessments are done properly.
In fact, I was not deeply involved in that EIA since 2018. I am in other section, but whatever knowledge I have, EIA refers to the sustainability. If those issues, social issues, must have been considered under that EIA, and प्लीज लेट मी अब मुझे कहने से ही आप नहीं करेंगे तो फिर मान लेंगे। सो अगर आप कहीं पे भी डेवलपमेंट की मैं बात करूं, ये रिवर में है इसलिए देयर आर डिफरेंट एग्जांपल्स इन द वर्ल्ड। रिवर से भी ज़्यादा मैं आपको और बता सकता हूं, वो वैसे है डिफरेंट प्रोजेक्ट। पहले थे खीरसर एरिया, दैट इज़ अ प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया। प्रीमियर कंपनी थी कोई यूके की, उन्होंने ऑयल एक्सप्लोरेशन की थी, स्पेशल परमिशन वो कोई रूल्स में चेंज भी की गई। दे इंश्योर्ड कंप्लायंस ऑफ दोज कंडीशंस। आप ये कह सकते हैं कि वॉट एवर द कंडीशंस हैव बीन इम्पोज्ड दैट मस्ट बी इंश्योर्ड टू कंप्लाई विद। आप अभी थोड़ा ही रोड बन गया है, शाह फैसल टाउन तक अभी आगे बनना है, जो जा रहे हैं वो देखें, उनकी भी आप वही आवाम है, वो भी उधर ही की। हमें वी हैव टू कंसिडर ऑल, वी आर नॉट अगेंस्ट द डेवलपमेंट एंड आई थिंक यू ऑल आर नॉट अगेंस्ट द डेवलपमेंट। इकट्ठे बैठ के यस वी आर वी आर वी आर वी आर वी आर वी आर इट्स वेरी ये आप किसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को ऐसे कहना, आपने देखें एयर क्वालिटी मॉनिटरिंग रैंडम की होती है, पुराना है, अब नए के लिए प्रोजेक्ट भी जा चुका है, एडीपी स्कीम भी जा चुकी है। आप प्लीज़ सुन लें, प्लीज़ सुन लें, प्लीज़ आप सुने भी सही। अगर आप कोई मैं गाड़ी कहूँ आपको ईयर 2000 का मॉडल है, उसको आप अपडेटेड तरीके से ऑपरेट नहीं कर पाएंगे। सिमिलरली वो 2006-7 के जो जायका की फंडेड चीज़ थी, उसका मशीन बनी हुई है, उसके एक सेंसर ही बड़ा महंगा है और उसको ऑपरेटिव करने में बड़ा इशू है। आप अगली बात सुनिए, I don't know मुझसे सीपा से आप बहुत खफाए हैं। This is not the first time. Honestly, नहीं, यासिर दरिया साहब spoke one day in another institute. It was a university. There was a counselor. He was speaking against the organization in English. यार मैं भी कराची का हूँ, आपको फिर मैं बहुत सारी चीज़ें बता सकता हूँ। आप प्लीज मेरी बात कंप्लीट करें। अगर इधर 10 बंदे गलत काम कर रहे हैं तो एक को सिर्फ आप नहीं कह सकते, आप सबको फिर पॉइंट आउट करें। नहीं कर रहे, मैं आप अभी इससे बाहर बता
अच्छा, okay, Sunny,
that is related to environment, that is related to climate change, but there are certain other.
If I may interject, these are all important points which we can carry on. I just want to refer very quickly to Khurram's comment about data, especially on heat. So 2 points, Khurram. Zufin is already aware of this. हमारी कराची अर्बन लैब में एक हीट गवर्नेंस रिपोर्ट निकली थी 2 साल, जहां हमने मसरूर एयरफोर्स बेस और जिना एयरपोर्ट स्टेशन की 60 साल की डाटा म्यूचुरोलॉजिकल डिपार्टमेंट से ख़रीद के ली थी। वी वर लकी, हमारा एक प्रोजेक्ट रन कर रहा था, सो वी कुड अफोर्ड इट बिकॉज द पीएमडी डजंट मेक दैट डाटा अवेलेबल फॉर फ्री। और उसके बेसिस पे हमने कैलकुलेशंस करी हैं, एंड इट्स वेरी सोफिस्टिकेटेड इकोनोमेट्रिक एनालिसिस. It's all kosher, it's all clean, you can dive into that, you can get it. On your second point, how do you actually measure or get data on the burden of extreme heat on bodies and health institutions, very, very hard to pin down because heat is a stealth-like killer. So, so there's a lot of medical evidence on extreme heat impacts to show that, well, if you don't die of a heat wave immediately, you might die of it 5 years down the road or 6 years. So you might get chronic kidney disease, cardiovascular issues, and so forth. So the burden on the health system is probably increasing from a conjunctural perspective, but how will you actually devise some kind of a measurement frame? Might it be longitudinal? I don't know, right? So it's not like we have a medical coroner sitting somewhere in the Karachi morgues like we had the case in point when the Paris heat wave happened back in 2013, 2015. जिसमें कोई 15,000 लोग मरे थे. So there was a historian who backtracked and a social scientist went and actually found out कि ये जो 15,000 लोग जो मरे थे, what were the actual reasons? Was it heat wave related or not, right? So because the morgue had kept all that data, we don't have that kind of evidence available. So you can't even do a deep dive into institutions like the AKU and others. So we end up relying on ED and those kinds of interventions who track it to some level. But even they say, well, we're not entirely sure these are heat-related issues. We know that heat kills more people than floods. We know that. But these kinds of conversations, especially on heat, are super important. And we're not having them at a national or even at a local level. So I just wanted to say that. And please go ahead, G. Umar Masood Saab.
Yes, you know, I'm a bit surprised by the conversation that just took place. So I can give you the example of Punjab. Over there we have the same issues, that there is a critique of government departments not doing enough or not doing anything at all. But I think I think as far as the data is concerned, people have come to acknowledge that this is a new word. Even as far as the government is concerned. See, the problem is, and I think Zofine actually pointed out very well, we in the government, and even urban unit included, we lack a communication strategy. We just do not know how to communicate data. We understand data. We can, use data to evolve policy. But if you want public support or if you want a narrative to be built around data, this is all about communication. And I think it is our reticence to communicate, which is a sort of a natural, well-honed ability of a civil servant, not to communicate and avoid communication in public, I think, which is going to be, it is going to be a great challenge, because there is a deluge of data which is coming. Whether the environment departments monitor work or do not work, IQ Air this smog season they have doubled their monitors. So many firms, even local firms as corporate social responsibility, are installing these low-cost monitor and registering themselves with IQ Air. So the number of air quality monitors have increased because the government of Punjab made smog a prominent issue on its own. So they had two options: either to turn a blind eye to it or to take it head on. And our sort of experience had been that November was a terrible month for us. The smog level went above 700, 800, it touched 1200, and we just did not know what to do. And there was a lot of introspection at that time, even at the political level, that have we sort of selected the wrong area to intervene in, and we are really taking a lot of political flack. Now whether it is weather patterns or sheer dumb luck, since December the air quality in Lahore has been significantly very better, relatively speaking, to the last 3 years. Now the issue that I want to say is that why we are sort of hesitant on measuring and communicating data. And I've thought about it, I've talked to other civil servants. We as civil servants have an issue that if data is wrong, we will be the scapegoats for it. And data usually, when it comes to environment and poor air quality, in some cases or in more than some cases, turns out to be wrong. And if you are sort of fielding that data and you happen to be a civil servant, then you'll be asked at what you have exactly done. So let me share my own example with you. and I think it has been sort of used in the press also a lot. In 2022, I think 2021, we did a Lahore's sort of air quality emission study, which was basically a tier 1 approach, IPCC methodology, back of the envelope calculation, not stack measurement. And we actually went ahead and published it. Now, out of that, a number came out that 83% of the air quality in Lahore is because of transport. The amount of pushback that the urban unit had to face from the transport department once that number came out was, and the transport department justified it in its own unique way, that you have sort of turned the spotlight onto us. The entire pressure is upon us, and we are being told that we are actually responsible for the bad air quality. And just look at the challenge that we are facing as far as public transport availability is concerned, which is very minuscule as far as Lahore is concerned, and the type of two-wheelers and the vehicles which are being used. So they said that you've done an unfair thing. But my problem at that time was that we had actually published the report, and unless somebody challenged the report in its quality or its content, I could not take it back. As the CEO of the urban unit, I could not simply pull back the publication which was on our website. So it stayed and stayed, but now the World Bank sort of took that number, and they are financing the acquisition of 500, I think, EV buses this time, I think, for the province of Punjab, largely to be used in Lahore. So the issue with data is that we do not have a clear handle as civil servants how to use data, because we are sort of apprehensive that this data will be contorted or concocted in a different way in the press. And while we have a lot of numbers, and sort of let me remind you why you need to invite civil servants at all these events. Not because we happen to be extraordinarily bright people, but no, we are not. We have a vantage position which is so envious that we see data, we see decision making, we see where other data stacks are, and all we need to do is how to have a strategy to communicate data. Unfortunately, the government, all governments, provincial and national, lack a very good communication strategy as far as climate change data is concerned. And the idea of bringing the media into this is that perhaps if we were to share data more openly and more simply, and I think that is a very, very key point. We sometimes, when we are looking at data, we get so much engrossed in it that only few of us can actually understand it in the room, that what is it, what is this all about. So if we are sort of, one takeaway that we can think about from this sort of heated conversation which just took place is that communication of data is a challenge that we face, whether it is an environmental impact assessment and everything else, or everything will have some data number to attached to it, and our sort of reluctance to be very open about it, uh, it sort of contributes to a vicious cycle. So unless you have data, and data which is well communicated, that type of a validation which people like him need to have his environmental impact assessment actually taken seriously will not be there. And that validation can only come across with what he said, which is basically collaboration and data sharing. So, these are sort of the bridge that we have to, cross. And because there is no bridge between the two of them, they are trying to shout at each other because they are trying to cross that bridge. And I think this is one of the key problems. Punjab, I don't know. Perhaps we were lucky, or I cannot sort of point out when this sort of change took place. But sharing data is now more open in Punjab, even at the public level, because there is a growing confidence that through data you can also hallmark your performance. This is very, very important. This same data, which is going to be critical for you in your initial years, is going to be a headache for you in your initial years. If you perform, this same data is going to deliver you success. So if you think in the long run, I think data is a good thing for the government to share. The first 2-3 years would be terrible because you would feel that onslaught that you are not performing well. But that would establish the platform that next time you discuss my performance, it will be on data only, not on whether I was saying something in a particular meeting or whether I was lazy or whether I was not responsive enough. Just look at the data. So thank you so very much. I think I took too much of my time.
Thank you, Dr. Masood.
Thank you.
All very important points. I'd like to move to Myra, who has a question, a comment, and then to Sidra also. And so Myra, on to you. G, and then we'll come to you.
I have a lot of things to say, sir. This is Myra Khan, by the way. I'm an urban planner. And I've had the privilege of being part of the Urban Unit Punjab with your predecessors, rest in peace, Shaitan Saab, rest in peace, and then before that also so I resonate with a lot of the things that he said, but I think we've sort of infringed on the spatial vulnerability subject because the data-driven session is about to come. So I reserve my comments on that. Turn this off. Turn this off. Yes. Is it better? Yes. So I just want to take the conversation back to the spatial aspect and the social aspect because I think we have an entire session dedicated for data-driven. I think Waqar Saab said something very important. He read an excerpt of the climate change policy, right? And it spoke a lot about urban planning and master planning. And, being an urban planner myself, and having been part of a lot of these urban planning, master planning exercises, I don't think we really understand what master planning is or what urban planning is or how we're supposed to look at it. I've also had the privilege of being part of planning exercises in other parts of the world. The one that I'd like to highlight here is my experience with the municipality of Rio de Janeiro and also Sao Paulo. They have a very unique zoning rules, code. I think we don't explore the opportunities that master planning brings to us, and one of the very neglected aspect is zoning and how creative we can be. So there's this one, for instance, zone that's called ZACE. I don't know exactly, I don't remember now what the Portuguese term is, but it loosely translates into zones of social interest, where you, as part of your master planning exercise, every single municipality has to map the zones that basically house communities that are vulnerable, that are low income. You have to assess how vulnerable they are to climate issues. Then you have to map the zones of social interest, the zones of environmental interests. You have to map the parts that need to be conserved. You're talking about orchards being cut off to develop housing societies. So, number one, just to keep it really short, I think our approach to master planning is extremely conservative and very old school, which is something that we need to actively speak about. We need to see how we can, learn from other practices. We don't talk about incentive zoning. We don't talk about a lot of the things that the rest of the world is doing. We're really stuck in that mindset of, typical master planning. And the other thing is, our master plans are highly, highly politicized. That is something that I'm often criticized about just for bringing it up. I think Imtiaz Saab remembers my comment on the National Urban Assessment launch. I'll give you an example of Sialkot Master Plan. It's been with the DPDC for almost a year and a half. And one of the reasons it's not being signed off is because some of the housing societies are owned by a very influential individual, one individual, keeping an entire city's master plan hostage. And since it's marked as unregistered housing society, we're not able to get that signed off. So, and this is just a glimpse of the many, 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 many problems we have with these master plans. So how do we take this up how do we actually make master plans that mean something? Because sometimes planning can do more harm than good. So we need to sort of, so just bringing that discussion back on the table if anybody wants to. And I think Sidra is maybe a very good person to.
So let's take now take Sidra's input also. Then we'll come to Majid Saab. So we are running out of time. We've got about 10 minutes left. So I'd like to take all Maha. Really, we'll see if we can squeeze you into. So Sidra, on to you. And if we can make it like pithy, yeah.
Just building on what Myra said, from the beginning of the conversations that we've had, I feel that we have kind of decentered communities from the conversation as a whole, because we've been talking about how we say that we've been saying that even rural log bhi feel kar rahe climate change ke impacts, and you just think that, I mean, they're working on agriculture, they're working on all the things that sustain every single human being on this planet. And even when we speak about master plans and everything, the framing of it does not center communities. I mean, it's mostly corporations that come up with the master plans, ya to government bhi kisi corporation ke saath collaboration kar rahi hoti hai. And because of that, there are so many things that are never taken into consideration, just like the Malir Expressway. The case was won, but it's still ab ho hi raha hai, to gaadiyan bhi chal rahi hain ab to. So that's the thing, that when you just think about urban and or be urban, and it's mostly like Karachi and interior Sindh, even though there are peri-urban areas in Sindh, just the framing of it all is also very problematic. Because हम even यहाँ पर जो livability indexes discuss कर रहे थे, उसमें भी it's like Vienna at the top, Karachi somewhere at the bottom. I mean, it's like a very colonial way of looking at spatial vulnerabilities. So those are my 2 cents, just to get the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saiba. I'm Majid Aziz. I like to be more known as the former president of Karachi Chamber of Commerce and Industry. लेकिन यहाँ इन्होंने UN Global Compact Network Pakistan लिखा हुआ है, तो some of the hats I'm wearing. I believe that is why I'm invited here. I don't know about others, but I think I'm the only industrialist here, unless there is someone else. And what I've heard, and we are so much sensitized with climate change, but a lot of what is being said is preaching to the already converted. But if you go to any masjid or any church and you hear the preacher, every time 1 or 2 points come up that you had not heard before, and that of course increases your knowledge. What I would like to talk about is that a lot of these events are held in very fashionable ways, and most of the people there already know, as I said. But what about the slums, the ghettos, the people living there? What about my laborers, my workers? When I asked someone, my worker, do you know that there's a very sensitive subject of climate change? But we know climate change. Badalta mausam. See, for them, that is what climate change is all about, So, even our businessmen, since I represent the mainstream business community, and when we talk to people from the markets and even industrialists, they are really not too keen about it. I mean, this is a subject they don't want to talk about. They would rather talk about gas prices and water prices and power prices. But for the industry now, it is becoming imperative. Why? Because of CEPA. Now, CEPA has a role to play, and CEPA is rightly, we need CEPA or an organization like CEPA. But here what I would like to say is, the problem with government is, and government functionaries is, with all due respect, who are in the government, is that you are more keen on penalizing. Penalize, usko pas penalize kar le. The job of an inspector, or auditor, or someone like, is actually to impart latest information, inform us about the gaps in our system, and give us time to address and correct these things. I will give you a small example. But just give me 1.5 minutes. I was I was leading a delegation to Dresden, Germany, and it had to do with a lot of things related to labor inspection and others. And this labor inspector, pretty old man, he said, I am invited by the companies to please come and give us time and check our industry. Here they just come in, and said that I have been in this business for 35 years, and in my whole life I have never penalized anybody. सीपा के भी लोग आते हैं, वो penalization की तरफ जाते हैं या फिर क्या होता है आगे, you all know that. But I support organization like सीपा. आज का नहीं, कल का मैं देख रहा हूँ. लेकिन again I will say one more thing. Because of the gas issue, people, industrialists in site and other areas, there are 7 industrial estates here. I used to head the site association of industry. What is happening is, now they have wood-based boilers. तो अगर आप हमारे साइट में जाइए और जगह तो ब्लैक स्मोक आ रहा है. सीपा को ये नहीं दिखता. सीपा आगे दिखता है मेरे छोटी मोटी चीज़ें क्या हैं. एक पैरामिलिट्री फोर्स 10 कदम दूर है जो वीआईपी ड्यूटीज पे होती है या गश्त लगाती है, उनको भी ये नहीं दिखता. और सबसे मुझे नहीं दिखता. मैं रोज़ निकलता हूँ तो मुझे भी नहीं दिखता. मैंने एक को कोशिश की, उसने बोला यू स्टे माइंड योर ओन बिजनेस, व्हाट कैन आई डू. So let's. This is one point I want to say about you, because this is mea culpa. Industrialist कोई भी हो, मैं हूँ. I represent them. So my fault. Now just 30 seconds. Just give me 30 seconds. इतना मैं आया हूँ तो कुछ तो हो जाए. हाँ, देखिए आप कराची पोर्ट चले जाए, ड्रेजिंग का भी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट देने में इनको प्रॉब्लम आते हैं. And what is the, and I will not go into the history of it, but dredging is not there. तो सारा इफ्लुएंट आता है, पानी आपका काला हो गया है. बहरम हमारी मरूम कहता था, I used to come out of my house and swim in the, today you cannot swim there. And then फूलपोतो सामने बड़ी अच्छी बात की कि जी वो क्या था, ऑर्चर्ड बन गए वो. तो सोसाइटीज बनती हैं तो मेरे में या मेरे और किसी में इतनी हिम्मत नहीं है until and unless the government is involved, until some others are involved. So then passing the buck is not the issue. अपने घर को देखो. Okay, what are you doing for you? Why are you allowing these societies all over? Everybody is talking about societies coming up, and agricultural land is out of circulation. आप अर्बन फॉरेस्ट की बात करें, there are many still areas. लियारी जो नदी उसमें बना एक लड़के ने, कुरैशी क्या नाम है, but it's a good thing. At least आ रहा है. And finally मैं ये कहता हूँ मुर्तज़ा भाव आए नहीं तो इनको भी ये कहना कि जी हमारा सबसे बड़ा एक और प्रॉब्लम है कि रोड बनता है और विदिन 3 months क्रेटर्स और पॉट होल्स बन जाते हैं. अ लॉट ऑफ ट्रैफिक इज ब्लॉक देयर. तो आर वी isn't that adding to the pollution? That is adding to the pollution. And one, I can give you one idea. अगर आपको इतना बड़ा शौक है जो मैंने क्या, is not a good thing to say. पर मेरे घर के बाहर KDS स्कीम 1 में जहाँ क्रॉस रोड था, वहाँ स्वीपर आके गार्बेज जमा करके आग लगा देता था. आई हैव अ लिटिल ब्रीदिंग इश्यूज. तो मैं 1-2 दफ़ा मेरे उनको चौकीदारों भेजा तो माना नहीं. Then I took one action, which as I'm a मेमन तो बंदूक से डरता है. I took my gun, did not have any bullets. I went outside. I said, I will count to 10. You find water and you extinguish the fire. If you don't do, I'm going to shoot you. So maybe the solution in the long run is जो habitual हैं तो कोई ना कोई आके एक बंदूक दिखा दे तो शायद काम बनेगा. Thank you very much.
So I'm going to now ask Maha, because she raised her hand. Then we'll go to Dr. Nabi, who has something to say also. Then Marisa, we will come back to you for a wrap-up.
Thanks, Nasheen. I don't think I can match what Majid Saab just said. I just had a couple of comments. I'll keep it very, very short. From a private sector perspective, and I think we're kind of missing that, last year, just a couple of facts I wanted to point out. So Pakistan imported almost 15 gigawatts of solar panels, which means we're almost kind of, we've transitioned to solar and it's happened automatically, organically, just because the need was so high. Okay, the average person had no option but to kind of, you know, move towards basic social need. And I feel like this is the situation we're in right now with regards to, I mean, to the extent possible, especially to Karachi mein log reh rahe hain, we've gone almost, we're purchasing our own water from tankers, and as it gets more expensive, I'm sure, solutions will spring up to kind of generate water from the air. We can't obviously build our own roads, but I know there are areas in Karachi where the citizens themselves are paying to get the roads paved, to get them improved. We're for the most part generating our own electricity. I mean, that adaptation part of it, Lahore, I was there in November. The private sector, I mean, they were selling these air purifiers which people had put in their houses for upwards of 100,000 rupees for one, something that sells usually for 15,000 rupees. So, I mean, there's definitely this need, and I feel like because जो public infrastructure projects होते हैं, largely funded by support from the ADB or the World Bank, etc. So I think there's really a need to get our local private sector involved in infrastructure resilience projects, because I mean it is a social need, yes, but I mean I think one good example what's worked well in Pakistan is our national highways. They're well maintained. People are happy to pay the toll fees. The bathrooms are well maintained. They're generating economic value. They're cutting down on individuals kind of moving around on their own. So I think this is kind of an opportunity really for the private sector to get involved in this, and in a way the government is trying to now support this as well. Abhi IMF ki team aayi hai, they're there in Islamabad to negotiate some kind of a loan agreement, and World Bank, yeah, and I mean the idea is really to kind of move finance towards climate resilience, adaptation, and all of these things. So I feel like the private sector needs to be more involved in this discussion as well, because I mean the state banks just launched their green taxonomy policy as well, right? And they've specified that these are activities that are considered green, including a lot of this infrastructure, right? Water management, efficient irrigation, rainwater harvesting. I mean these are activities they've actually mentioned in their draft document. It's very, very technical, needs to be simplified. They've done a decent job of classifying these things. So definitely I think there's a need for our local private sector to be involved in these decision making and investing in these rather than just kind of relying on international support. And I think the first presentation was on that. We're over reliant now on international donor funding, so it needs to change.
I hope that $1 billion special fund doesn't go into budgetary support, which is always the case.
So,
right, Khurram?
Yes. So I will now move to Dr. Nabi, who wants to say something. I'll come to you, Yasir. Have to be really fast, and finally to Dr.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Nasheen. You've done a terrific job. It's been a great discussion, and you've helped us recover some of the time we lost earlier. This is fantastic. But I want to bring the discussion back to the data issue by asking Umar to comment on the following. He said that the difficulties he faces come from other government departments because data shows them up in a way they don't like. My question to him would be, suppose you also put out data, in other words, more granular data, as Khurram said, that makes Department of Transportation your partner in the following sense, that if you can pinpoint the source of pollution coming from the transportation sector, the two-stroke engines, the rickshaws, etc., so that the Department of Transportation can present that data to the political masters and say, you take the policy decision that needs to be taken to address this issue, then you will have greater collaboration within the government across departments. This is something that the keynote address speaker, Mr. Bhatti, so emphasized so much. So more granular data would be the way to go. And since Punjab has had a head start in this, Are we now reaching a point in Punjab where such granular data can be provided? And what lessons are there for Karachi?
Thank you very much, Dr. Nabi. Yasir, Speedy. Speedy Punjab.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Um, I'd like to do a quick institutional analysis. Because we are a democracy, policy making has to include citizens, and there is a culture of not doing enough consultation. And I can go turn by turn, but if we say P&D, let me mention Malir Expressway, जिसका कि EIA जो हुआ था उसका एक भी कमेंट शामिल नहीं किया गया. We went to the environmental tribunal. उन्होंने सारी बातें मान ली and at the end of it उन्होंने कहा कमेटी बना दें. So now the case is in High Court. इसमें जो है another example I'll give. Malir Expressway की मतलब the other characteristic is that it's made inside the river. It's taken sand from the river जो कि बैंड है. आप रेती बजरी नहीं उठा सकते दरियाओं पे से. उसी दरिया से 40 किलोमीटर 20 फुट ऊंचा बंद नुमा ये हाईवे बनाई गई है. एंड देयर इज अ बैन ऑन इट. सो गवर्नमेंट तो कम्प्लीटली इलीगल काम कर रही है. अच्छा, एडीबी की इसकी फंडिंग थी, एफसीडी और यूके की फंडिंग थी. वी कंप्लेन टू द एडीबी. उन्होंने एक महीने में देयर इज अ कल्चर ऑफ चेंज विद इन एडीबी. वी आर सीइंग दे आर रिस्पॉन्डिंग टू द कंप्लेंट. उन्होंने कंप्लेंट पर रिस्पॉन्ड किया एंड दे विथड्रू देयर मनी. एफसीडीओ इनिशिएटेड द क्लॉबैक कि ये पैसे वापस निकाले जाए. रीज़न उनके लेटर में क्या था कि व्हाट दे आर डूइंग टू द मलीर रिवर एंड इट्स एनवायरनमेंट्स इज बैड फॉर क्लाइमेट रेजिलियंस. ओके, सो अब मैं पीएनडी की तरफ थोड़ा सा आना चाहता हूँ. आई थिंक कि बातें तो बिल्कुल ठीक है, मतलब जो आप कह रहे हैं आई 100% एग्री विद दैट, ठीक है, लेकिन प्रैक्टिस में कंसल्टेशन नहीं है. आपको यू आर नॉट गेटिंग द राइट इन्फॉर्मेशन, आपके पास डेटा नहीं आ रहा है. सो डिसीजन मेकिंग जो है ना वो बिल्कुल ऑफ हो गई है. ठीक है, दिस इज इन मतलब मैं बहुत ही एब्स्ट्रैक्ट सी बात कर रहा हूँ, लेकिन मैं उसको बताता हूँ आपको. गुज्जर औरंगी नाला, ठीक है, उस वो यहाँ के वो हैं ड्रेनेज सिस्टम है कराची का. ये और बात है कि सीवरेज सारा उसके अंदर है एंड सीपा डज नथिंग अबाउट इट. ये एक अलग मसला है. ना मास्टर प्लान बना है कि वो उससे डील कर सके. मतलब बने हैं लेकिन ये कभी इम्प्लीमेंट ही नहीं हुए. सो ये तो डायरेक्टली आपकी इन्हें डिपार्टमेंट की तरफ जाती है बात. लेकिन अभी जो स्वीप था वर्ल्ड बैंक का प्रोग्राम, ठीक है, एंड बिकॉज यू नो देयर अदर पीपल बिलोंगिंग टू आई गेस वर्ल्ड बैंक एंड दैट लेवल ऑफ डिसीजन मेकिंग. तो जो स्वीप प्रोग्राम था उसके तहत नालों की सफाई होनी थी. उस नाले की सफाई करते करते उन्होंने एक जगह का सर्वे भी किया, डिज़ाइन चेंजेस कर दिए विदाउट कंसल्टेशन एट ऑल, और उसके अलावा 7,500 मकान गिरा दिए. और आप इमेजिन करें, एक हमारी देखें शहर वैसे ही उसके सिस्टम्स नहीं चल रहे, पुराने हैं, मेंटेनेंस नहीं है, ब्रोकन सिस्टम्स. उसके ऊपर से क्लाइमेट का चैलेंज आ रहा है कि फ्लड आ जाए. 100-200 मिलीमीटर में शहर जो है ना वो गाड़ियाँ तैर रही होती हैं. 500 हो जाए तो क्या होगा. लेकिन ऑन टॉप ऑफ दैट देन यू हैव गवर्नमेंट प्रोजेक्ट्स लाइक ये स्वीप वाला और नालों की सफाई, जिसमें कि आपने रमज़ान के दौरान, कोविड लॉकडाउन के दौरान आपने आके 7,000 घर तोड़ दिए गरीब इलाके के. ठीक है, वो वहीं पे पर्दे लगा के लोग महीनों रहे हैं उसके अंदर. ये किसने किया. इसमें सुप्रीम कोर्ट का भी डिसीजन था, इसमें मुर्तज़ा वहाब साहब का भी डिसीजन था. ठीक है, ये करने में जो उन्होंने सर्वे किया वो एनईटी यूनिवर्सिटी ने किया, इट वाज फ्लॉड. वो ऊपर से ड्रोन से सर्वे किया. अगर 3 फैमिलीज थी दे रजिस्टर्ड एज 1. नाउ दे आर फाइटिंग ओवर. उनको वो केस जो था वो हाई कोर्ट में गया. 3 साल बाद जो उनको 2 साल के रेंट की कॉम्पनसेशन मिलनी थी अकॉर्डिंग टू whatever agreement they came up with, वो सीएम मुराद अली शाह साहब और मुर्तज़ा वहाब साहब, मेयर साहब, दोनों कोर्ट में मौजूद थे. उनसे पूछा गया कि ये 2 महीने बाद आपने रेंट पेमेंट्स क्यों बंद कर दी उनकी. उन्होंने कहा लोग लेने नहीं आए. ओके, सो द थर्ड लेयर ऑन टॉप ऑफ दिस इज के गवर्नमेंट का एटीट्यूड टुवर्ड्स पीपल.
ठीक है, इससे पता चलता है कि आपने डिसीजन पहले ले लिया है, आपको लोगों से बात करने की ज़रूरत ही नहीं है, ठीक है। सो दिस पब्लिक पार्टिसिपेशन की जो है, ठीक है, आप हम लोग सिविल सोसाइटी है, ठीक है, हम तो कोर्ट में जा रहे हैं जनाब। वो जो प्रीमियर का जिक्र किया अभी वकार साहब ने, वो तो शहरी कोर्ट में गया है। 90s के अंदर जो वो शेल और प्रीमियर जो थे उनको बाहर फेंका गया है, वो ईपीएन ने नहीं किया है जी। अच्छा, तो कहने का मतलब ये है कि हमारा कल्चर चेंज होने की ज़रूरत है, सिंपल एज दैट। आपकी जो भी टेबल है जहाँ डिसीजन मेकिंग हो रही है वहाँ सिविल सोसाइटी का होना ज़रूरी है, ठीक है। आप शहर के लोगों को बिठाएं। आपकी जो, मैं वापस सीपा पे आता हूँ। ओके, सो जनरली हमने देखा है कि पीएनडी फाइनेंस डिपार्टमेंट वो प्रोजेक्ट को पुश करता है, दे डोंट केयर अबाउट पेपर वर्क। हमने PC1 खोल के देखा है मलिर एक्सप्रेसवे का, और वो हमने लॉ के थ्रू निकलवाया है, और वो जो निकलवाया है हमने PC1 उसका, उसके अंदर सारे सिग्नेचर्स आ गए, कौन बैठा हुआ था, किसने डिसीजन लिया, सारा कुछ। सो बेसिकली वो फोर्स किया गया कि, और सीपा का रोल ये होता है कि रबर स्टैम्प उसको करे, आगे निकाले। जो पब्लिक हियरिंग हुई उसके कमेंट्स तक उन्होंने उसमें एड्रेस किए ही नहीं, which they are required to do according to the law. That's why we went to court.
Okay, Yasir, I'm going to have to stop you there, okay? Because I've forgotten Lubna also wants to say
Sure.
something.
Okay.
All very, very good points. And then finally, Bhatti Saab, for you too.
Thank you so much to everyone. I would like to add to what Yasir has mentioned, and it is the debate seems to be about the data, the evidence. My question is that, okay, we don't have the data, we should have the data, but what we do with the data we have. For example, don't we have the data about the illegal housing schemes? Don't we know that we have the highest house price to earning ratio in the world? That implies that we have housing schemes only for the elite class. And don't we have the data about the waste which is dumped into the river, into the Indus River, especially all the waste, including the nuclear waste, I tell you, including the nuclear waste. It is dumped into the Indus River, the water we use, especially mostly.
Madam, if that is true, if what you are saying is true, this is like a global headline. If nuclear waste is being poured into a river, this is a headline that can play out potentially worldwide. So I would
if you
ask
just
you
look
if this
at
is
the,
actually
if you look at the
factually true or not.
PCSIR recent report, it is about the drinking water or the drinkability of the water. It published in Dawn recently. I'm just quoting to that report.
Does that report say the water is
So
radioactive?
what that report shows that all the waste, including the nuclear waste, is dumped into the Indus River, and that goes untreated through the Dhabeji, which most of the marginalized communities, I'm not talking about the elite people, I'm not talking about the high income group who purchase water. You can just go, I can share that report with you through the message, and you would find it is not surprising. This is what which is happening. They have quoted in that report that because they actually examined different samples of the water of the different companies, including the water that comes through the tape, and that's the water which comes through the Dhabeji. So they have found this contamination in the water which is seriously alarming, seriously alarming. And if you talk about the Karachi's waste, that Karachi's waste goes directly into the sea. So that is causing the sea erosion. Don't we have that data? Don't we know that all the waste, including the medical waste, is dumped around the Redi Goat and the Ibrahim Hedri, where the children, yeah.
We keep hearing about it, but we don't know the quantum of the data. Even the NIO doesn't.
Okay, if anyone has time and you can go and make the visit of the area, because we have been there for some time to collect the, just to have the observation that what is going on. So you would see that children, and especially the children, they are mostly the out of the school children. So they are exposed to medical waste. This is so alarming. We have the electronic waste. We have observed this, the noise pollution coming all from there. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, just conclude. Let me conclude it. We have what we do with the data we have. Simple. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lubna. But fast, rapido conclusion. And to say that there's tea after this. So we will then see.
Tea is the incentive to make me quick
And one thing I would say that about Professor Noshin, that she is fair and unbiased in being rude. Unbiased. So that is a rare thing in this country. Okay. So number one, data. That's very important. I partially agree that there's lack of data, but that I think in some cases there's surfeit of data. With a lot of data, data is lying in silos. That's not being linked, and that's not being cleaned, and so we need a think like a data.gov type of a thing. So, and it's easy, it's a low hanging fruit. We can anytime do it because we have data. Yes, okay, we will talk about it. And you said that participation and collective change. Yes, we have to do this, and as Majid Saab said, mea culpa. So starting with, the government is at fault. I'm representing the government at the moment. Lots of things we need to do, we are not doing. So we need to be put in dock. We need to go more to civil society and industry and academia so that they challenge us on our word. For example, I say something today and I want to be challenged after 6 months down the road, and Bhatti, you said this. What was it? So that's the important thing. We have to change our colonial mentality, mindset, and we need to be different. So data, talking about data, you mentioned about rickshaws and all those things. Why are we allowing motor vehicle industry to produce so many vehicles and let it go on our roads? We are not enhancing the capacity of our roads. And why every day thousands of new vehicles are coming on the roads? So these are type of things we in government should be doing. Regarding SEPA, what they are doing, but actually Kulpoto Sahab is a government servant. I would tend to support him on one thing, not out of bias, but there are a lot of things. Government, I already said, should be doing a lot, and there are leakages and misuse, and that's not intentional. Sometimes out of capacity, we don't have good people who know that what they are doing. So this is important thing. We need to build our capacity to do lots of things. Data bhi aa gaya, so we need a capacity to analyze those data. And regarding Myra, you said master plans, and I represent an organization that has created 17 master plans and working on 14 more. But when I 1 year ago joined, and they showed me, my staff showed me shells in which those master plans, very glossy, beautiful, colorful, and shelled gathering dust. I said, okay, ban gaye, bahut acha, yaar, ye to badi baat ho gayi. Then what? After that, what? Implementation? Where is implementation? None of those master plans have been implemented. And आप इस तरह की चीज़ें करते रहें, keep doing, and implement नहीं करेंगे तो क्या होगा? So what we are experiencing today. So master plan में zoning is the key issue, because we are fast depleting our agricultural land and giving it to the societies. So we were self-sufficient in food. Some time ago we were exporters. We are importing everything at the moment, and this will continue to deteriorate. So master plan में zoning की बात है, तो this is the only keyword, zoning, which is why these are not being allowed to implement. And I have taken an issue with everybody and with the political people. I went to them. I think you want me to create master plans? Yes, बनाओ, ये तो बड़ी अच्छी बात है. It is not the full thing. I told them that then I will be sometime stepping on your toes, because those societies जो बन रही हैं शहर के आसपास, शहर को नैरो कर रही हैं, एग्रीकल्चरल लैंड को डिप्लीट कर रही हैं, उनमें से मोस्ट में आप लोगों के स्टैक्स हैं. अभी करोगे तो ठीक है, 15-20 साल के बाद कोई बाहर का इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन आके आपसे करवाएगी. लेट्स डू इट आवरसेल्व्स. सो जोनिंग की इम्पोर्टेंट चीज़ थी जो मैंने इधर लिखी थी.
और ऑर्चर्ड्स और फूड सिक्योरिटी इज़ रिलेटेड टू इट. सेकंड, आपने कहा रिक्रिएशन, ग्रीन स्पेस, मास्टर प्लान अभी जो नए बन रहे हैं. सो द कंसल्टेंट केम टू मी. I want to clear that my office is creating master plans through consultants. We are still in the process of creating in-house capacity.
Actually, but Isa, with due respect, when I said health and well-being, I didn't mean recreational farms. I need something farmers.
Green spaces.
No, I need something farmers. I took them back. Well, we can talk about it.
Yeah, we can talk about it. I will learn from you. I learned a lot from so many people. Regarding green, a quick word that I talked to the person who was creating master plan of Mirpur Mathelo Ghotki in the northern area near Jacobaba. And I asked them, what's the size of the green space you have green zone? He said 10%, this is the standard. Man, why? We are not a small, tiny European country and they are all green. So, हमारे पास इतनी land है, why not more than that? I said it should be 30%. After a lot of resistance, I was able to bring it to 20%. एंड उस 20% में भी उन्होंने स्कूल के प्ले ग्राउंड्स, कॉलेजेस के प्ले ग्राउंड्स और वो जो पहले ही थे वो सारे मिला के तकरीबन 20% कर लिया, कुछ बढ़ा लिया. लेकिन दिस इज़ माई फर्स्ट सक्सेस एंड आई विल मूव टू 30% इंशाल्लाह. सो टू रैप अप, डिफ़िकल्ट सिचुएशन तो आती है, ठीक है ना. वी हैव टू लर्न टू टर्न इट अराउंड एंड कन्वर्ट इट एन अपॉर्चुनिटी. So this is an opportunity, as Pulpodo Saab said, that pani aa raha hai, flood aa raha hai, it's an opportunity. Let's use it productively. So store it. So all these things we can do together. And civil servants पे नाराज होते रहें, it's your right, because we get salaries from your taxes. But हमारे साथ empathize भी करें और हमारी hand holding भी करें. Thank you very much.
Thank you.